Hello to you all and to everyone joining us from around the world. Thank you and welcome to Climate Change, the Decade of Action is Now, a session hosted by SDSN Youth. We're getting here today after COP26, a summit that highlighted the importance of finding feasible and shared solutions worldwide. And as humanity is called upon action to mitigate the impacts of climate change. Thank you, Hor, for being here, and please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat room that you can find below. And a few days ago, when I was preparing my opening statement here, and I sat down pondering what should I say to welcome you, the audience, and to set the tone of the meeting, I was quite unsure. Should my message be of inspiration? Should I be more celebratory? The Decade of Action, I believe it is our time to make a difference. It is a call for us, the youth, to get motivated and to take action. I believe that today's panel brings out the best in youth and youth innovation. It underlines the importance of youth action and it strengthens our position as the most powerful community in the planet. Our generation is more informed, more aware, and more concerned of the situation of the planet than ever before. Not because we were born with a green thumb, but because we face an existential crisis that will decide our future. You know, there isn't a better opportunity for us to change than now. Us, the United Nations Sustainable Development Solution Network, the Youth Initiative, we've been actively empowering young people to lead the way for a more sustainable, brighter, and future for everyone. We remain committed to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement with a vibrant community, with relevant educational tools and resources and impactful innovations. SDSN Youth has transformed itself from an organization to a movement, and I couldn't be prouder to being part of this community of change makers and leaders. With that being said, my name is Nadia, and I'm here on behalf of the SDSN Youth to welcome you to these very special events where we launch our guidebook for youth, a guidebook to climate change in this decisive decade of action. Thank you all, and to all our panelists here today. On the panel today, I begin with you, Nicole Fagan, the co-founder of the Palau Pledge. Nicole is a group account director at GYK Antler, a boutique and AD agency in Boston. She co-founded the Palau Pledge. It is a groundbreaking initiative to protect the Pacific island nation of Palau, an archipelago of 200 islands. Nicole and her team collaborated with the government to design an eco-pledge which all visitors are required to sign upon arrivals. And in 2017, Palau became the first nation on Earth that requires all visitors to take an oath to protect it. Nicole and her collaborators also designed a major campaign that included a film about protecting the island. This movie, is Sweat, the Cannes Lions International Festival of Creativity, winning 3 Grand Prix, including the inaugural Sustainable Development Goals Grand Prix. And the Palau Pledge makes a huge milestone in the growing movement of conscious tourism. Thank you, Nicole, for being here today.
Thanks so much.
And joining her on our panel is Luke Mairo. Luke Mairo is the co-founder and chief operating officer of VoltPost. VoltPost is an innovative smart electric vehicle charging company that leverages lampposts to create charging infrastructure. The mission of VoltPost is to decarbonize mobility in cities and to democratize charging access. Luke was previously a coverage banker at Barclays Corporate Bank, and he co-chaired the Barclays Environment Network of the Americas. He created events like Funding Green Innovation, a panel with speakers from Barclays, Closed Loop Partners, and Columbia University. And he was nominated for the Barclays Citizenship and Diversity. And it's a pleasure for having him here. He is also a Techstar lead mentor and is pursuing a master in sustainability management at the Columbia University School. He firmly believes that the climate crisis at hand must be solved through innovation and a concentrated, supportive, and collaborative effort across networks. Thank you, Luke, for being here today too. Thank you really for joining us.
Thanks so much, Nadia.
And joining Nicole and Luke on the panel is Brighton Kahoma, the Global Director of SDSN Youth. Thank you, Brighton. He is a prominent youth activist and social entrepreneur, born and raised in Zambia. He graduated from Columbia University with a vast track record of leadership experience, working at the intersection of sustainable development, corporate sustainability, communication, and youth empowerment in more than 20 countries and 4 continents. He was awarded by the Queen Young Leader Award by Her Queen Majesty Elizabeth II in 2015. Brighton also received the WWF International President's Award in addition to being appointed as one of Young World Ambassador. Thank you, Brighton, for being here today and for joining us.
Thank you, Nadia. Very excited to be here and welcome everybody.
That's great. And joining on the panel, there is also the 2 chairs of the Climate Working Group, which delivered the guidebook that we will be launching soon. So Carol and Swan, thank you for joining us. Caroline is the co-leader of the Climate Working Group, as well as the Deputy Project Lead in the Global Network here at SDSN Youth. She has an in-depth insight into climate policy at the United Nations and European and private sector level. She is passionate about decarbonization, green innovation, and youth leadership on climate action. Thank you and welcome, Caroline.
Thank you, Nadia.
And Moha and Suban, thank you for being here too. He is the regional focal point for Asia and Pacific region for SDSN Youth. In 2019, Suban represented the South Asian Network of UN Sustainable Development Solution at the UN Economic and Social Youth Forum at the headquarters of the United Nations in New York. He's a clean energy professional with over four years of experience in research and consulting, and his core area of work revolves around development sector on integrating energy with the SDGs. Currently, he works as an associate at PwC in India. Thank you for this great panel that we have here of expert and committed youth. Thank you, and it will be a pleasure. So, audience, feel free, please, to send any question to the panelists through the Q&A box that you can access from the bottom of your screen. We will be having a couple of minutes or 5 minutes at the end of the conversation to collect them and to answer them. And if we don't, we can also get back to you. And with that being said, I'm taking no more time up to you. Let's begin. I would like to start with you, Nicole. So almost your entire professional career revolved around climate action and raising awareness on the effort that each one of us must do to protect our ecosystem. What is the inspiration for Palau Pledge and where did it all start from?
That's a great question, and thank you for asking that. My background is in communications. So I did start off my career working in the advertising world, and I think that my inspiration or drive to be part of the climate movement is that, you know, I do feel that there is a role for each and every one of us to play. We all have a special skill set. We all have done things that can be added to this movement. And I think what's been difficult for young people as they, you know, look to become involved in it is they think, I don't have anything that I can give to this movement. But, you know, looking at how I've been able to contribute and how my colleagues have been able to contribute, I really say that every single person has something that they can contribute, even if it's something small. And I think that that's going to be what makes the difference in making, you know, a real impact in climate change is the ability for every single person to bring their skill set and their specialized knowledge and their specialized, you know, passion to this movement. And, you know, from a perspective of being inspired, you know, as I sit here right now, I'm looking at a playground with children playing on it. I really think about what we're leaving for the next generation. You know, are we able to make a notable impact so that we're not forcing them to clean up the entire mess? We need to make progress now so that they can have something that they can leave for their children and the next generation after that. So I really, you know, to sum it up, it's really about bringing your individual passion and your individual specialized knowledge to this movement to be able to make that impact.
Lovely. I couldn't agree more. And the caring for the next generation is something that we will be feeling more and more. And also the fact that each one of us can contribute and can do something according to this passion. And this brings me to you, Luke. I would like to move to you with your expertise in tech and green innovation, which is more like a passion, like it moved your professional development. What directed your passion and what motivated you to create Volt Post? Tell us more about it.
Yeah, that's a great question, Nadia. And I'd say similar to Nicole, my background wasn't necessarily in sustainability. I actually graduated as a finance major from school. And I think if I look back and ask myself where I would end up, I would never have guessed here. But if there's a message in all of it throughout, I'd say just dive into the things that interest you. I looked at a number of events. So I started at Barclays Bank. I saw a climate group at Barclays Bank that was hosting an event. I was like, this is interesting to me. I had taken one sustainability course in university and got involved in that. And through enjoying that, I asked the head of that network, can I join the working group? Can I get involved? And she said, yes, of course. And I leveraged that platform to cold reach out to some of the people in the space that really interest me, some of the big leaders, and host panel events similar to this. And something I've been amazed about throughout, I think, the course of my career is how many yeses come from just asking questions and getting involved in things that interest you. So you heard my background. I'm not going to go through my resume and bore you all with it again, but really that led me to getting a master's degree in this space, which opened new doors. I ended up taking an opportunity to lead an entrepreneurship organization in that master's degree, which again introduced me to so many smart people who are motivated to make change in this space. And ultimately, this company idea came out with someone that I co-lead that organization with. And we had gone back and forth on a number of ideas, saw just so much opportunity for change. And there's just so many, I think, pockets of industries that need to be disrupted with new innovation. And so to get to your question on Volt Post specifically, we looked at the urban environment and said, you see all these amazing proposals coming out about electrification, and there's so many inspiring kind of tasks to get there, but also targets to hit on getting electric vehicles to the road. But the reality is the main thing stopping people is there's not charging infrastructure built out for them yet. And so we looked at the problem statement and said, in city environments where most people park on the street, well, you need to find a different solution to get dedicated charging to them. And so we looked at lamppost infrastructure specifically, built out a business case saying, if you can use the existing infrastructure, you can decrease really the cost and the timing of deployment, but also not take up new curb space for people. And through the networks that I think I've built over time by reaching out to people and getting involved, we got some tremendous support early on and have really taken this thing as a rocket ship from the start of this year until now. So what I would say, just as like a few takeaways for anyone listening, it's really just to dive in. There's so many open doors in this world because it's such a precious issue that we need to solve, and a lot of people are willing to help you. And then also to really question everything, that there's so many industries in the future that will be totally disrupted by technology and the future of change here. And so by questioning, you can find a lot of unique opportunities. I think I'm just one small example of what needs to get done here. So keep questioning those industries and find those opportunities for yourself.
Really, I love that. And I do really believe that dedication can really be disruptive some of the times, because most of the time innovation can be found everywhere, but we have to pursue something, to look for an idea and to be committed to it. And talking about ideas and passion, I would like to move to you, Brighton. And your story began at 14 with a local radio broadcast to raise awareness. Well, what happened after that?
Thank you so much, Nadia, for that very interesting question. And I think very similar with what Luke and Nicole have described. I think it's having that seed of passion within yourself to be able to identify what you're really interested in and how can you use your skill sets and interest to be able to pursue a very noble cause. And in my case, my interest was really as a result of growing up in an environment where I observed legacy environmental liabilities. So I could see how big corporations invested in the extractive industry, in the mining of gold and diamonds, and being exposed to the negative environmental externalities, such as sulfur dioxide emission, water bodies being polluted, land being degraded. I developed an interest in promoting dialogue. How could we bring in the different voices of those who are affected, but also those that were charged with the responsibility of regulating sustainability? And I think what happened afterwards is a sheer realization that one good idea can radiate and spread like good energy. Or I wanted to use wildfire, and I realized that we don't want to be burning forests anymore. But one good idea can radiate and spread and scale much easily. But I think what it takes is just having that sheer determination and realizing that you don't need to be big to start, but you have to start for you to be big. And the intention is to establish that very simple idea that you have, run with it, be passionate about it, and recruit a cadre of like-minded people with diversified skill sets that can help you take it to the next level. So I think that's what I see as a common thread in my journey. And also just believing that you can be able to do it, and you need to remain extremely, extremely committed and consistent to addressing all these challenges that you address in your community.
Definitely. Thank you, Brighton. And as you said, a little seed can go a long way if we're consistent and committed. And while these two keywords are what I found in our working group and in the development of the guidebook that we're delivering today. So I would like to welcome Suban and Caro, and as the chair, the co-chairs of the working group, and to ask you, since we're providing this, which we want to be a resource and a tool for youth, what motivated you to work on this guidebook, and what did you aim to achieve?
Thank you, Nadia, for asking this question. For me, the guidebook is a reflection of all the current climate crisis that we as a society are dealing with. And I think climate change in its true nature cannot be tackled only through one line approach, since it requires a holistic intervention. And the motivation for me has been very much in creating awareness and taking a stand against these issues. So this publication will be one of the voices that I would say that we intend to bring change within the youth, as youth are the torch bearers of our future. So the answer and the question, I would say that it has always been within us, but the aim in working with this publication is to mobilize youth with more scientific approach and more knowledge as we can give to them.
Thanks, Suban. I'll just continue.
Yeah.
For me, it's similar. Having been active in the public sector, I've seen that there are a lot of reports, but they're not being read because it's just too much information. So we wanted to create a paper that will educate, inspire, and just be fun to read. And it's really concise. So what you see is that it's quite short and quite concise, but also fun to read with all the infographics. And that was really motivating to me to make an impact on youth and actually be used as well.
That's great. Well, we have here an awesome panel and panelists of speakers. So I would like to ask a few questions more to all of you. Feel free to contribute. I would like this to be a dialogue and a conversation. And Actually, I have a couple of questions for you, but I think that they integrate with what the audience is asking, because I have one of our spectators that is asking, for example, how can we work from zero to be a climate activist? And well, I would like to pose this as a more general question, like what can the role of youth be and what should it be in the society right now and looking in the future? So also maybe giving some tips and advice for how to become climate activist or climate involved. Thank you. I would like any one of you in the panel, if you would like to answer, please.
Well, I'd maybe just underscore something I said about like questioning the status quo. I think you all as young people have a fresh perspective on what the world can be, right? How can we build a more equitable future? How can we build a more sustainable future and really reshape what some of the industries we see today are? And so as you go in and start to question the things that currently exist, I think you have time to really innovate, try different things, fail a decent amount probably, but then learn and really solve this crisis. You know, I think it takes a lot of small people, individuals to really solve this. It's not a silver bullet problem. And that's something that this really growing and innovative youth population has the advantage of here.
And I would completely agree with that. I think that what we've seen is that past generations have innovated in their own ways and in many ways have kind of gotten us to this position. So it really is about the next generation to be thinking about what innovations we can bring to the table and question, like you said, Luke, just questioning everything, really asking those questions. How can we change things? When we were considering the Palau Pledge, we had a really hard time with a lot of people saying, well, why would you question the immigration system? But we said that if that's the way, then that's the way. And I think that we've learned that that idea that, you know, questioning has really allowed to like other countries and other places really thinking like, what are these systems and can we disrupt them in a way that fits the need of us, of what we will need for the future and the innovations that we will need to create a more sustainable system moving forward.
Adding to what Luke and Nicole just said, I also think that youth are uniquely positioned in being so idealist and really seeing it with fresh eyes, as Luke said, and being really creative and just having fun with it, you know, having fun finding solutions, having fun speaking their truth, and having fun to get out there and be active and create something new. And I think also demographically, we'll get to that later, but demographically also youth is projected to grow in the future. So we are a powerful generation and we should use it as well.
I totally agree with you. And if any other of the panelists would like to intervene, please feel free. Yeah, Swan?
Sure, Nadia. Nadia, I'll start off with a small quotation that I remember. There was a time that young Einstein once said that we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking used to create them. And we all agree that the problems that we are facing currently are due to the present generation and the generation before us. So all the problems that we are facing right now, we need to have some innovative ways to solve them. And there is a concept by the name of fluid intelligence. So youth are commonly referred as more fluid intelligent because a lot of research has been conducted that young people are more likely to be accepting the change. They believe in climate change. They try to volunteer. They work on the social causes. They advocate for different things that you would not find in the older generation, because youth are more inclined towards the change. So I would say that policy advocacy at a local level would be required at different regions. There might be different problems at different regions, and we need to localize the issues and the sustainable development goals also based upon the region that someone is living there and someone is facing. So that is something I would say, that policy advocacy. And also the question that the audience, one of the audience member asked, that what they need to do if they want to start from the zero. So they need to first look at the organization or the not-for-profit organization that are currently working in their region and that are raising voices. So rather creating their own platform at once, they need to understand that how policy advocacy and how creating awareness works, so they can join the movement within their region. Or they can eventually start off with something that can be started off at very small space also. Like they can start off with a online awareness campaign, or treating policies on a different perspective. So I'll give you an example that recently happened in India. So there was an environment law that was supposed to come last year, and a lot of changes were there which allowed forest to be cut down. So there was a campaign that was run by youth activists over here, and a lot of school students and college students, they started sending emails to the forest minister, and his inbox was literally spammed with a lot of getting a lot of emails and a lot of letters. So this was something that it was started here in India. So these are small things that we can participate.
Thank you, Subhan, also for the very concrete example. And talking about being effective and being concrete, I would like to pose a question to you, Luke and Nicole, because we talk about sustainable development so much, and we just had the COP26 event, but what should sustainable development really be and focus on moving forward? So as I said, we are living in the decade of action. So what should we focus on in this decade of action to achieve sustainable development for all, and what should it mean? Thank you.
That's a great question. As I look at, coming from a small Pacific island where I lived for a number of years, and having started the Palau Pledge, I really think about the learning from Indigenous communities, learning from the areas that are being affected the most. So what I would like to see moving forward is for us to, rather than put developed solutions on developing nations, flip that switch so that we're actually learning from developing nations to listen to what they need and take the knowledge from the communities who have been stewarding this land for centuries and have sustainably done so. And implement those in a real way. And I think that we have started to see some of that happening, and it's very encouraging, but I think that that is a roadmap to a more sustainable development, is to really be listening and not taking our developed solutions and imposing them on places that need different solutions.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, Nicole. I think even from institutional and research standpoint, having research co-produced by the local communities is just so important, because if you don't have that level of co-production, you'll just never find the right answers. Something that we founded Voltpost with is not just the environmental aspect, but really trying to democratize access. That if you can get solutions that are not just specific to a certain class of people, but can actually allow everyone to participate in the benefits of what technology can bring in the future, then that's really what the mission should be, and should take priority over the things that only benefit a certain select people. So I just think that's something that needs to be kept in mind throughout this entire process, or we won't actually have sustainable development by definition.
This is totally true, and I agree with you both. And talking about that, before digging into the presentation of our guidebook, since we're providing a very effective and concrete tool, I have a question again for you, the speaker. So we're amidst a very peculiar time in history. We can say a global pandemic, widespread racism, inequalities. So what role does climate change play in this entire scenario? So how can we positive combine energy and work towards climate change in this kind of scenario?
Well, I think one thing that we can maybe see as a silver lining with the pandemic is that all of a sudden we're brought to the world scale again, and realize that global cooperation is not only necessary but possible. I think to carry that line forward with climate change is such an important thing, because realistically, we can't solve this with a single country working or even a continent. It needs to be a global cooperative effort. And my hope is that the alarm bells that were rang with the pandemic can allow people to carry through that urgency and allow for global cooperation, because I think that's so important.
Yeah, please, Nicole, if you want to add anything, or also Brighton, I would love to hear also your opinion on that, on what the role of climate change can be.
That's a very good question, and I'm very excited to listen to all the very creative and diverse perspectives about how we can respond to the challenge. And I think, Nadia, if you ask me, as Lucas equally described, the pandemic is really reminding us of so many things happening globally. I think for me, when I reflect on the intersection that exists between the climate crisis and the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, I see very common similarities. I think one thing that I learned from this is the fact that you need to think globally and act locally. And I think that really describes the reason why we created this climate change working group. We have all these global problems, but change really happens in the communities, on the ground, where people are experiencing all these challenges. That's number one. Number two, it's seeing ourselves as global citizens, realizing that what I do in my small hometown of Kitwe in Zambia can affect someone who's living in Bangladesh or living in Wuhan, China, or in New York City, United States. So that makes me realize that I should be very conscious about my daily actions. But when I flip that, I realize that what I do positively towards sustainability can also impact positively other people. And I think it's that realization that can make us global citizens and actors. And I think the antidote to doomism is action. And I think all of us in here are taking incredible action, which is very inspirational. And we need to be proud. But even as we are proud of what we are doing, we need to build a community of like-minded people who are working on this, because we are seeing how the climate crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic has induced a lot of anxiety, and we are hearing about mental health challenges. So how can we build a coterie of young doers, young actors that can inspire us with the level of innovation they are doing? And all of us have a role to play in education, in engineering, in technology, in policy and legislation, in art. All of us have a unique role to play. And lastly, I think sustainability careers have transitions. Whether you're in banking, whether you are in engineering, you can still play a critical role in advancing sustainability. You just need to identify all those pinpoints and act upon it without asking for any permission from anybody. Thank you.
That was really meaningful. And I don't know, Nicole, if you want to add something just to conclude this wonderful question, and then we can move on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one of the things, especially being in the US during this pandemic, is the reluctance of so many people in different communities to be open to different solutions, especially creative solutions, when it comes to even basic things like preventing the spread of diseases by wearing masks and getting vaccine. And I think what I look forward to from the young population, and what I'm encouraged from the young population, is their ability to see problem solving and be more open to it. So their ability to learn from other places and say, what worked in this community might work in my community, we should try it. And being open to that. I think that there takes a lot of courage, takes a lot of bravery to be open to different solutions and to be trying things out. And I think that, you know, when a pandemic comes through and there's fear, similar to the fear of climate change, people tend to close themselves off and go to their comfortable space. But we need to do exactly the opposite. We need to push ourselves to go to more uncomfortable places, to try solutions we would never have considered, because those are the solutions that we need at this time. So I am encouraged when I hear about youth being more open to even basic things like wearing masks in schools, because that shows that they might be open to other things when it comes to new solutions to things like climate change.
Definitely. Thank you, Nicole, and Luke Camero for this inspiring answer. And I would then like now to move on with the presentation of our guidebook, and let's dig into it. And then I address to Kero and Subhan. So would you like to please navigate us and explain the hard work and the outcomes that, that you achieved, really?
Subhan?
Thank you so much, Nadia, for setting up the pace for this wonderful discussion. And we are also grateful for all the panelists for their valuable comments and the thoughts that they have provided during the discussion. On behalf of the Climate Working Group, we would like to extend a warm welcome to everyone. And finally, the moment is here. We are ready to launch our guidebook. And it took months of efforts for all of us to prepare this guidebook. And yeah. So the working group, the Climate Working Group, it was actually set up earlier this year during April. And it comprises outstanding people from SDSN Youth having different specialization on climate related issues. And it was co-chaired by me and my colleague, Caro, who also works as a deputy project lead for our global youth networks at SDSN Youth. And apart from the leadership shape of the Climate Working Group, we also have our expert members who contributed in shaping this paper. I would request our members, Mr. Sanki, Munir, Brenda, and Kanan, if they are present, to kindly just switch on their video for a couple of seconds and just show their beautiful faces to the audience. If any of the member is present or they are comfortable, because I understand that a lot of people are joining from different regions.
Yeah, they will be sharing the screen, and we will also be thanking them. So thanks to the whole working group, and we can also move on with the Climate Working Group outcome and the document description. Thank you, Subhan.
Definitely, Nadia. So the background, the objective of setting up this Climate Working Group was to actually bring a publication that is prepared by the youth and is for the youth. We actually took inspiration from the 3 key UN conferences that happen every year. One is on the Food Security Summit. Second is on the Conference of Parties that happened recently, a couple of weeks back. And the third one, the UN Biodiversity Summit. So apparently 3 different working groups were created by SDSN Youth, and one of which was our very own Climate Working Group, which was definitely inspired by the Conference of Parties. And the 3 major objectives that we ought to cover with our working group was to increase the youth participation in policy dialogues, educate young people about climate change, and to motivate them to take action. So we thought of simplifying everything, breaking the jargons, breaking the keywords into simpler words so that it is easier for them to understand. The overall outline of the working paper is presented into 3 parts. The first starting off with an introduction on climate change and their impacts and the risk on us and the surrounding that we face, and also defining climate vulnerability and equality. In the second part, we have covered strategies to mitigate climate change, and different adaptation and mitigation strategies have been particularly defined in each of the section. In the last section, we have highlighted the roles that each of us as an individual, as a collective society, governments and private sector has to play to achieve the climate action plan. So this is the gist of the overall working paper. Now to begin with the reality of climate change that we are facing and the overall presentation, I would request my co-chair, Caro, to take the lead. Caro, over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Subhan, for the introduction. So the first chapter, Facing the Realities of Climate Change, outlines the impacts and risks on humanity that the climate crisis has really. And interestingly, it's self-induced, as the 6th assessment report by the IPCC has found that climate change is anthropogenic, meaning that human activities and their carbon intensity are the main drivers of climate change. And interestingly, also the global north is mostly, can be held accountable mostly by this because of their great activities of the global north being the greatest emitter due to industrialization and unsustainable consumption practices. While this creates some form of injustice, as the least developed or most developing countries are facing the brunt of climate change. So they're facing mostly the impact of climate change, and they're not necessarily being the cause of it, or mostly being the least emitters in all of this. So we at the Climate Working Group really stand for climate justice, and we want to promote that as well, and promote the solutions of trying to equalize climate justice and to give a voice to marginalized communities. And we found solutions such as the public sector offering an inclusive policy dialogue, as well as offering solutions to marginalized communities towards adaptation, to build capacities locally when facing the risk of climate change, as well as lastly the global community adjusting to these least developed countries, and to give resources to them to try to support them in their fight against climate change, as they're, as I said, facing the brunt of it. For example, least developed countries or small island developing countries are wondering with rising sea levels as to how to navigate that migration. So moving on to the second chapter.
Nadia, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah. No, I'm very happy for this interaction. I would just like to say that now that we're evaluating the strategies and policies, I would like to ask to our guests also, Luke, Myro, and to Brighton, also their insights on this, because we shared with you the working paper. So we want to know, what do you think about specifically also this second section, and what can your insights be on this? Thank you.
Sure, happy to jump. My preference is towards the innovation side. I think that if I, give a general comment towards some of the strategies that I think could really solve a lot of the climate crisis, I think that now is the perfect time to try to innovate, and just that there's a broad recognition that we need to start new companies and make change, and just the amount of support, whether it's, I know there was just an event that SDSN had on financing clean technologies, but really there's so much, not only capital support, but also personal support available, I think more so than has ever been for the sustainability space. So if you're someone who considers himself a more innovative person, or want to, dabble in entrepreneurship, I think there's many doors open to you. And so I'd underscore, innovation and really entrepreneurship as a strategy to solving a lot of these problems.
That's great. Thank you. And please, Swan and Carol.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Luke, for commenting on the innovation part. We have definitely included the innovation part within our mitigation and adaptation strategies. So this is the core part of the working paper that we have prepared. And to begin with, I'll just start off with these two terms, mitigation and adaptation. So these are the most commonly used terms that we are listening over the couple of years now. And as per the definition set up by UNFCCC, mitigation addresses the causes of climate change and is primarily an international issue covering benefits on global level. And these efforts generally take time to reap benefits and have more long-term benefits due to inertia of climatic system. So the priority sectors that we have covered within the mitigation are energy, transportation, industries, and waste management. And you would be surprised to know that it is estimated that around 60% of the world's carbon emission are coming from energy, transport, building, and water infrastructure. So this is something which is very alarming, making it obligatory for us to adopt clean alternatives, which Luke is also working on uh, through his company World Post. And together we can only lower the carbon emissions while introducing the decarbonization technologies like introduction of renewable energy, energy efficient products, nuclear power, switching to greener fuels, and also to include negative emission technologies. So NETs are new terms that are more commonly used and are carbon dioxide removal methods. And more oftenly, technologies like bioenergy, carbon capture, and storage are mostly used worldwide. And in the final stage, it revolves around stabilizing and reducing the temperature. And uniquely, this strategy does not alter the GHG levels. And moving on to the adaptation part, so there is one major difference between adaptation and mitigation. So to understand adaptation, adaptation addresses the impacts of climate change, whereas as discussed in the previous slide, mitigation addresses the causes of climate change. So adaptations have more short-term effects on the reduction of vulnerability. Primarily, it is a local issue, as one size fits all model does not work for adaptation. And it may work for mitigation strategies on a larger perspective when we consider climate change a problem as a whole, as a holistic problem for the whole world. So there are few adaptation strategies that we have defined within our guidebook. I'll just give few examples what exactly these strategies are. So starting off with the structural and the physical adaptation. So it covers development of enhanced drainage networks, flood levels, culverts on the roads, sea walls, coastal protection. Moreover, it works around the conservation part, where we can adapt structural and physical changes within the ecosystem that we are living in. And then moving on to the social adaptation, it is something which we all of us we can work on as creating awareness about rising of sea levels, asking our governments to take action, taking policy advocacy campaigns, mapping things what exactly is happening within your region. So these are few examples that within social adaptation we all can participate in. And the last part of the adaptation, where an institution comes into the picture. So obviously we need a lot of financial incentives, which include subsidies and tax rebates to promote green technologies. So all these should come from institutional adaptation, and a lot of uh, organizations are working on providing subsidies and rebates on different renewable energy systems and energy efficient system. And a lot of governments are also building standards like building codes for new architecture buildings. They are introducing green buildings within the new infrastructure that they're developing. So all of these adaptations we have covered in within our report. But I'll say ultimately the choice of which strategies to adopt will be based on the adaptation need and the assessment of the local region. So with this, I think we can move on to the next slides, and I'll ask Kara to summarize the presentation with the action points that youth can take up, and setting up accountability also. Over to you, Caro.
Yeah. Thanks, Subhan. I'll wrap it up with the last chapter, our accountability, where we don't want to point fingers, not at all. We instead want to see the unique position of each stakeholder being empowered. Starting with mostly democratic governments. The main objective of governments is to install sound institutions and to implement the rule of law. Here, injustice would come in play again, as it is important to allow for marginalized communities to take part in this as well, and to be lawful, to go about it in a lawful way. Now, more so, the governments could also align their political strategies with SDGs and climate action. This would send a strong signal to the private sector and civil society in the overall strategy, whereas the private sector would then be able to follow suit and to do what it is doing best, and that is to innovate and create with new solutions, here with aligned with climate action, for instance. Now, as I already hinted on, the private sector, if the private sector will allow to align its business models with climate action and SDGs, they will be innovative and capitalize on these solutions in a resource efficient manner, which is exactly what we would need. Also, large players like multinational enterprises have a huge impact to turn things around by, for instance, internalizing negative externalities like emissions are, or also to foster development in the areas or the countries where they would, align their or apply their supply chain at. And also lastly, there is immense capital flows that could be drawn or directed towards solving or towards closing the financing gap of SDGs and climate action as well. So corporations have a huge chance to take accountability and to really bring this home, so to say. Now, lastly, with civil society, it's really about the individual acts, and I can only reiterate what Luke and Nicole have said before, that the individual actions really do matter, and that the civil society, if all the individual actions accumulate, it will create a bigger picture. And it's also the civil society that can inform the private sector and the democratic governments on their needs and wants, really, by either voting with your dollar or voting in election, or with what we have done by informing with this paper, really, or by informing with activism or all kinds of local acts. All of it matters, which brings me to my call for action, that youth is uniquely positioned as they are facing the brunt of climate crisis, really. And here it's a combination of demographic growth of youth, as youth is projected by 2065 to grow by 1.5 billion people. And in LDCs, it's even more, there's a projected growth of 62%. And then also what we've talked about earlier, that the young population is so idealistic and active and really seeing it with fresh eyes, that they could come up with creative solutions. So we do really see youth as change agents. That's hence why we created this report. You can read up on it on our website. And thank you, Nadia. I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you really for your inspiration and for this inspiring call to action that we as youth, I think that we all heard it. So I thank all our audience and our panelists for attending today's session. My special thanks also to Nicole, which joined us, to you, Luke, for being here, and for Brighton for joining us as well, and to our two wonderful co-chairs, Kero and Suban, for the amazing work that they did. I also would like to take a couple of lines to thank the Global Secretariat of the SDSN Youth, and in large, I am honored to be part of the SDSN Youth, and I deeply appreciate all their help in making this panel discussion what I think is a huge success that I hope you all enjoyed. And a special mention of gratitude to our COP26 team, which really strived in these couple of months to deliver great work and great tools for the youth worldwide. And sincere thanks to the whole Climate Action Working Group led by Span and Caro. Thanks also to Ezra Yego, and that actually initiated this working group, and to Francesca Aka, to Trisanki, Nicole Radish, Anna in Australia, Anita and Christina Christoforou for their support, and also to our spectacular global communication team, which is made by Amy Howe, Crystal Ye, and Nimrita Singh. And allow me also to thank and appreciate the work done by Ermia Chan, Si Hang Tran, and the rest of the SDSN Youth members and alumni, as well as the network coordinators and SDG coordinators that conducted all the many events that are part of the COP26. And last but not least, I would also like to thank my team, the Global Partnership and Event, and specifically Kayla, Colliard, Javier, Harenas, Pratim Baumik, and my friend, what I like to say, my friend, Mir Mustafa, which is an incredible human being, for their dedication and hard work to provide you with this event. Thank you, really. I hope that you enjoyed it. And as I said, and as was mentioned in the chat, the guidebook will be available for download, and it will also be available in our resources section in the website. And while I was introducing the panel, I couldn't answer a particular question. I said, should I be more of an inspiration or more celebratory in my moderation? Well, after hearing our panelists and seeing the guidebook, I reek of hope. I look ahead to brighter days, and I would like to leave you with a small thought, which I call like my motto, which is the world needs dreamers and the world needs doers. But above all, the world needs dreamers who do. So do not wait for a perfect moment, for a perfect idea. Every idea, every action is going to help the world to become a better place for all of us, a place we can't only dream of, but that we can actively build together. Thank you, and stay safe and take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Nadia.